What are your thoughts with regards to what has taken place recently in India, though? In the past year odd, there have been multiple incidents which have taken place with Indian companies when it comes to diethylene glycol and ethylene glycol contamination in cough syrups. And separately, there have been a case of eye drops in the US also, which have been substandard. How do you deal with those issues? Does it affect your view of compliance in India?
I would say it affects my view, but it's not that my view has changed. It just strengthens the concept that there should be one standard for all pharmaceuticals, regardless of the country that it's going. We have confidence that when it comes to generic drugs, for example, the drugs getting into the U.S. are very high quality because they go through so many steps of checking. There was a bit of a loophole on the eye drops for that particular type of material, and we're getting Congress to change the laws so that we do have more authority to intervene there. But what happened with the ethylene glycol contamination, those were drugs going to other countries under a different standard than we use. And it's tragic enough when adults die from something like this, but children is just unbearable. So all this does is just strengthen the concept that we need to have a very robust regulatory system, high quality inspectors, a lot better information exchange, and more than anything else, I mean, you have 1.5 billion people here or so in India who need high quality pharmaceuticals too, and so there's so much in it. It's not just about us in the U.S. There's so much in it for India to get this right.
Well, just on that point with regards to diethylene glycol as well as ethylene glycol, the view is that the supply chain is probably contaminated with the substandard ingredients, and there's a possibility that we could see further incidents in the future simply because we can't track the supply chain so closely. As an FDA, as the head of the US FDA, what would your opinion be on that, and how would one probably try to curtail it?
Well, I have opinions, and then I have what I'm legally allowed to do. And my opinion on this is very clear. There is no reason in 2023 why we shouldn't have digital access to the entire supply chain. I would envision a map on a wall that's digital where you could see all the material and the amount of material as it goes from being, I remember that the starting materials for most drugs are really petrochemicals, much like you would find in other things that are made that are non-medical. But we should be able to keep track of how much there is and where it goes, and the testing that's done can be integrated with that information. This is also important because let's suppose somewhere in that node, I'll use the example of a tornado because a Pfizer plant that's just a few miles from where I live was hit by a tornado and took out a very large supply of generic drugs. Let's say that happens. For us to recover, being able to look and see where the supplies are and put them together is important. But it's also true that since these materials go through the supply chain, that if you found a root cause problem early in the supply chain, you could deal with it much more quickly in terms of where all the different aliquots of that supply have gone.
Will the U.S. face a shortage because of the tornado hitting the Pfizer plant?
It looks like we've averted it. And I mean, one of the things about the FDA that I admire so much, remember, the commissioner is a political appointment and only for a short period of time. Most 18,000 people are full-time FDA employees who do this work. We have an entire team of people who do nothing but deal with the possibility of a drug shortage. And in this case, there was an immediate response. The company did a great job, and our people pitched in to make sure that we could recover as quickly as possible. If there's a shortage of one drug, there may be another that's just as good, or someone else may make it. All that involves our people at FDA and the industry working together. So we can handle this thing. And in fact, we're doing it about 200 times a year now in the U.S., and then about 30 to 40 times per year, a real shortage occurs. And I'm hoping that we can bring this to zero, taking into account all the things we've talked about today and fixing them.
So you've met a lot of people from industry in the past in your trip to India. When it comes to compliance, do you think that there's been a formidable change which has taken place? Because one of the key issues used to be data integrity, data falsification, which a lot of Indian companies were hit by, say, maybe a couple of years ago. Is that resolved and behind us?
I put it like this. A lot of the companies we've worked with for a long time have come up to a standard which is every bit as good as anywhere else in the world. And so we're seeing a lot of very high quality activity in the industry here in India. But you also have a lot of new people getting into the industry, and there's a significant learning curve there. And there's a real need, with your vast resources that you now have for education, there's a real need for training a large number of people who really start out with an understanding of all these disciplines that have to come together: chemistry, biology, human studies, medicine. It's a complicated set of issues where you need the whole team to be at the table in order for it to function. It's kind of like, I don't know, CNBC. You've got to have producers and anchors and the people rolling the film. They've all got to work together as a team, and that's what we need.
So particularly for compliance, and I take your point, particularly for compliance, a lot has to do with the top-down culture, from what emits from the management on the top and what goes down into the plant. Has that changed in India? Because a lot of the compliance issues we used to face was also related to the culture of the Indian people.
Well, I'm almost 72. I feel like I've seen every situation, and I don't think there's anything unique about India. In other words, these problems exist everywhere. And I would react a little bit to top-down. I certainly believe that the leaders have to exude quality in their thinking and an absolute commitment to integrity. But there's also a very important bottom-up component of this. If the people who are in the workplace have a deep ethic of integrity and honesty, even if it hurts, that's also very important. So I don't think this is something that's unique to India, but there's a lot to work on here to get that balance right. And, simply put, it's something that happens in every business I've been involved in. In healthcare, I'm a doctor, and we've been through this in healthcare. What happens if someone makes a mistake? Do you cover it up, or do you talk about it and then fix the problem so that it doesn't occur again? And in a company, if there's a manufacturing problem, sometimes that puts severe strain on the finances of the company. And in every business, there's a tendency, if the bosses don't say, we have to be honest here, the workers are in a very difficult situation of speaking out, which is threatening their jobs. And so, again, not unique to India, but it's definitely an issue here, and I think it has gotten better. We've met with your leaders, not just your government officials, but your industry leaders while we've been here. One thing we want to do from our FDA perspective is reward the people who do display this commitment to integrity and quality. It's one thing to make a pill one time that is good, but to make a pill continuously over time that's always good means that you have to have things in place in your company, and the management and the expectations and the education of employees. We saw one yesterday where a number of employees have gone and gotten PhDs at the expense of the company. That's a wonderful component that we should all aspire to have in place.
But while India has been the front leader when it comes to generics, we haven't really been able to make inroads when it comes to R&D as well as innovative drugs. Do you think that would probably be the next leg of growth based on what you've seen?
Definitely. I mean, a lot of smart people here. And, I worked at Google in between my two stints at FDA. My leader was Sundar, who, and if you look at Microsoft, same thing. These are, you produce a lot of smart people who don't just have to make the copies of other drugs, and many of your people have gone to the US or Switzerland and have been the chemists that have designed the innovator drugs. So it's definitely part of India's future. But I hope in that effort we don't lose sight of the fact that so much of the world will be dependent on inexpensive, highly reproducible generic drugs. The common diseases that are causing most of the death and disability in the world, heart disease, diabetes, cancer, neurologic disease at the end of life. We have small molecule reproducible medicines that India is in the best position in the world to produce at a reasonable price. So I'm all for the complex biologics, the innovator drugs, go for it. But the world is depending on India for this special, very large category of life-saving medication.
Well, Dr. Califf, thank you very much for joining in and speaking to CNBC-TV18. We hope you had a very successful trip to India.
Thank you. I had a great time, and I feel very optimistic about our future together.